Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to day 3 of our Xanathar's Guide to Everything week. So today we're going to be looking at the martially inspired classes. So we're going to be taking a look at the options for the fighter, for the rogue, and for the monk. I'm kind of looking forward to this because the fighter class is going to contain my favorite of all the options that are in this book. So let's actually just go ahead and get straight to it, and we're going to have a look at the fighter. Alright, so the fighter has 3 separate archetypes to go through, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the background information here. I'm also not as keen on the background stuff for the fighter as I was other classes so far. So the first thing that we have is just the heraldic signs, which again I'll just leave here if you want to take a look at it. Up next is the instructor. So who instructed you on your fighting style, gladiator, military, city watch, tribal warrior, street fighter, or weapon master. And then there's just the signature style. So, essentially how you fight. Do you fight in a way that's elegant, brutal, cunning, effortless, energetic, or sinister? Excuse me. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those since there's a lot to take in with the fighter class. So let's go ahead and start with the martial archetypes, and this is my favorite of all of them so far because this is the one that I want to play the most, and that is the arcane archer. So in the past, the arcane archer was specifically an elven prestige class, but now it's open to, I guess, any race. There's no actual limitation there. So let's just go ahead and look at their abilities. So starting off, you can get Arcane Archer Lore when you take this archetype at 3rd level. You learn magical theory or some secrets of nature, typical for practitioners of this elven martial tradition. You choose to gain proficiency in either Arcana or the nature skill, and you choose to learn either Prestidigitation or the Druidcraft cantrip. So both pretty cool little cantrips, and the skills, and it doesn't, the skill that you choose doesn't dictate which of the cantrips you take, so you could take, for example, Arcana and Druidcraft if you wished, but those are things that you get for free, which is pretty cool. Also at 3rd level, you gain Arcane Shot. So it says you learn to unleash some magical effects with some of your shots. When you gain this feature, you learn 2 arcane shot options of your choice. Once per turn, when you fire a magic arrow from a short bow or long bow, as part of the attack action, you can apply one of your arcane shot options to that arrow. You decide to use the option when the arrow hits a creature, unless the option doesn't involve an attack roll. You have, excuse me, you have 2 uses of this ability, and you regain all expended uses of this when you finish a short or long rest. So that's pretty good, actually. So even on a short rest, you get your 2 uses back. Now the number of uses never changes. You only have the 2 uses, but you do gain additional options that you can choose from. Starting at 7th level, you get another one, 10th, 15th, and 18th level. Also, each option improves when you reach 18th level as well. Alright, at 7th level you get Magic Arrow. So, at 7th level you gain the ability to infuse arrows with magic. Whenever you fire a non-magical arrow from a short bow or long bow, you can make it magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. The magic fades from the arrow immediately after it hits or misses its target. Alright, and then we have Curving Shot. So at 7th level you learn how to direct an errant arrow toward a new target. When you make an attack roll with a magic arrow and miss, you can use a bonus action to re-roll the attack roll against a different target within 60 feet of the original. So essentially, if you miss somebody, you can attempt to use it or make your attack hit somebody else. It uses up your bonus action if you do so, but that's still a pretty good way of trying to get the most out of an attack. At 15th level you get Ever Ready Shot. So starting at 15th level, your magical archery is available whenever a battle starts. If you roll initiative and have no uses of Arcane Shot remaining, you gain 1 use of it. So normally you have 2 uses. If you didn't get a chance to finish a short rest, but you have used both of those options up, and you get into another combat, then you automatically regain 1 use, which is pretty cool. And then we'll just go over the arcane shot options. So we'll start off with banishing arrow. So this is you use abjuration magic to try to temporarily banish your target to a harmless location in the Feywild. The creature hit by the arrow must also succeed on a charisma saving throw or be banished. While banished this way, the target's speed is 0 and it is incapacitated. At the end of the next turn, the target reappears in the space it vacated or the nearest unoccupied space the nearest unoccupied space if the original space is occupied. At 18th level, when you reach 18th level in this class, the target also takes 2d6 force damage when the arrow hits it. So that's pretty good. Now, so under the arcane shot options, the DCs uses the same formula as all the others, but it's 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. Alright, up next we have Beguiling Arrow. So your enchantment magic causes this arrow to temporarily beguile its target. The creature hit by the arrow takes an extra 2d6 psychic damage and choose one of your allies within 30 feet of the target. The target must succeed a wisdom saving throw or it is charmed by the chosen ally until the start of your next turn. This effect ends early if the chosen ally attacks the charmed target, deals damage to it, or forces it to make a saving throw. The psychic damage increases from 2d6 to 4d6 when you gain 18th level. So this one's kind of interesting, but seems weirdly complicated. So you fire an arrow at an enemy. If it hits the enemy, you then force them to make a wisdom saving throw, or they're charmed by one of your allies. That's within 60. Within 30 feet of the target. So if you have an ally that's within 30 feet of the person that you just hit with the arrow, you can try to have it charmed by that character, but not the archer. Seems kind of weird, but there you go. Alright, up next we have Bursting Arrow. So you imbue your arrow with a force energy drawn from the School of Evocation. The energy detonates after your attack. Immediately after the arrow hits a creature, the target and all other creatures within 10 feet of it take 2d6 force damage. This damage increases to 4d6 when you obtain 18th level. And we have Enfeebling Arrow, so you weave necrotic magic into your arrow. The creature hit by the arrow takes an extra 2d6 necrotic damage. The target must also succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or the damage dealt by this weapon damage dealt by its weapon attacks is halved until the start of your next turn. The necrotic damage increases to 46 when you gain 18th level. So with the Enfeebling Arrow, if it hits, the target has to make a Constitution saving throw, or the creature's weapon attacks deal half damage for the rest of until the start of your next turn. So you hit it. If you hit an enemy fighter, for example, and they're using a longsword, their longsword attacks would deal half damage if they fail their saving throw. We then have Grasping Arrow. So when this arrow strikes its target, conjuration magic creates grasping poisonous brambles that wrap around the target. The creature hit by the arrow takes an extra 2d6 poison damage. Its speed is reduced to 10 feet, and it takes 2d6 slashing damage the first time on each of its turns it moves 1 foot or more without teleporting. The target or any creature that can reach it can use an action to remove the brambles with a successful strength athletics check against your arcane shot DC. Otherwise, the brambles last for 1 minute or until you use this option again. The poison damage and the slashing damage both increase to 4d6 when you obtain 18th level. So this one's pretty powerful just because it can deal extra damage over time if the brambles aren't dealt with. Now we have Piercing Arrow. You use transmutation magic to give your arrow an ethereal quality. When you use this option, you don't make an attack roll for the target. Instead, the arrow shoots forward in a line which is 1 foot wide and 30 feet long before disappearing. The arrow passes harmlessly through objects, ignoring cover. Each creature in that line must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes damage as if it were hit by the arrow. plus an extra 1d6 piercing damage. On a successful save, the target takes half as much. The piercing damage increases to 2d6 when you reach 18th level. So that's another really good ability. You just simply draw a straight line, and any enemies that are in that line are going to take some damage. They can make a save throw to reduce it by half. So that's a pretty good way of hitting multiple targets and ensuring that you're going to get damage through. So that's a pretty good one as well. Alright, up next we have Seeking Arrow. So using Divination Magic, you grant your arrow the ability to seek out the target. So when you use this option, you don't make an attack roll for the target. Instead, you choose one creature that you have seen in the past minute. The arrow flies towards that creature, moving around corners if necessary and ignoring 3/4 cover and half cover. If the target is within the weapon's range and there is a path large enough for the arrow to travel to the target must make a dexterity saving throw. Otherwise, the arrow disappears after traveling as far as it can. On a failed save, the target takes damage as if it were hit by the arrow plus an extra 1d6 force damage, and you learn the target's current location. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage, and you don't learn its location. The force damage increases 2d6 when you get 18th level. And the last one that we have here is Shadow Arrow. So you weave illusion magic into your arrow, causing it to occlude your foe's vision. I guess it's like obscuring it. With shadows, the creature hit by the arrow takes an extra 2d6 psychic damage and must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or is unable to see anything further than 5 feet away until the start of your next turn. And the damage increases to 46 when you reach 18th level. Alright, so up next we're going to take a look at the Cavalier. So the Cavalier is actually a pretty good callback to the first edition AD&D Unearthed Arcana book, which is fitting because a lot of these class options came from the Unearthed Arcana playtest. The Cavalier is kind of your prototypical knight. They excel at mounted combat, as well as trying to make it so that enemies are attacking them sort of idea. So why don't we just take a look at their class features here. So starting off with the bonus proficiency, they can choose one of the following skills. So animal handling, history, insight, performance, or persuasion. However, if they decide not to use any of those skills, the Cavalier can also choose to learn one language of your choice. So if you don't want any of those skills, then you can take a language, which is great, but being able to have things like insight or persuasion usually are pretty good skills to have as well. Then we have Born to the Saddle. So starting at 3rd level, your mastery as a rider becomes apparent. You have advantage on saving throws made to avoid falling off your mount, and if you fall and descend no more than 10 feet off the mount, then you can land on your feet if you're not incapacitated. So as long as the hit that knocks you off your mount doesn't knock you unconscious, or have another status effect that renders you incapacitated, then you can simply land on your feet, which is pretty cool. Finally, mounting or dismounting a creature costs you only 5 feet of movement rather than half your speed, so it makes getting onto your mount or getting off the mount a lot easier. At 3rd level as well, starting at 3rd level, they gain Unwavering Mark. So there's a lot of stuff in here. To paraphrase how this works is the Cavalier essentially chooses a target and they mark that target. So while the target is within 5 feet of you, a creature marked by you has disadvantage on any attack roll that doesn't target you. So you have to be sort of within melee range, basically, in order to get that ability. But if you mark somebody and you're, within melee range and they try to attack somebody else that isn't you, then they have disadvantage on the attack roll. In addition, if a creature marked by you deals damage to anyone other than you, you can make a special melee weapon attack against the marked creature as a bonus action on your next turn. You have advantage on the attack roll, and if it hits, the attack's weapon deals extra damage to the target equal to half your fighter level. So basically with that, if they target somebody that's not you with an attack, on your next action, it's strange that it's not a reaction that you do immediately, but on your next turn you get a bonus action that you can take that gets you an attack against the person that you marked, The advantage only applies to that roll. You don't get advantage to all of your attacks that round, just the one that you take as the bonus action. And you get extra damage equal to half your level. So at 3rd level, you'd only be doing an extra point, but if you're at 4th level, then you'd be dealing an extra 2 points, and so on and so forth, since you always round down. Now it says, regardless of the number of creatures you mark, you can make a special. You can make this special attack a number of times equal to your strength modifier, and you regain all of these uses of this ability once you finish a long rest. So when you mark someone, that's sort of a 4th edition D&D mechanic that I don't think exists too much in 5th edition here. But when you mark them, there's nothing else other than the abilities that they grant here. But if somebody else were to mark the same target, then your mark would disappear and theirs would supersede it. Alright, at 7th level, Warding Maneuver. You learn to fend off strikes directed at you, your mount, or other creatures nearby. If you or a creature you see within 5 feet of you is hit by an attack, you roll a d8 as a reaction if you're wielding a melee weapon or a shield. You roll the die and add the number rolled to the target's armor class against that attack. If the attack still hits, the target has resistance against the attack's damage. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your Constitution modifier, a minimum of once, and you regain all the expended uses when you finish a long rest. So whenever you, your mount, or other creatures are attacked within 5 feet of you, you can roll a d8 using up your reaction, add that number to their armor class, so it may cause the attack to miss, and if the attack still hits anyway, then it's only dealing half damage, which is pretty cool. Then we got Hold the Line. So at 10th level, you become a master of locking down your enemies. Creatures provoke an opportunity attack from you when they move 5 feet or more while within your reach. And if you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, that target speed is reduced to 0 until the end of the current turn. So the one thing in 5th edition is that a creature doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity until it leaves your threatened area. So in this case, if they move around, like take a 5-foot step, for example, even though that mechanic doesn't quite exist anymore, but if they were just to move, 5 feet while still maintaining, being in your threatened range, you still get the attack of opportunity, which is pretty nice. Alright, so then we get Ferocious Charger at 15th level. You can run down your foes whether you're mounted or not. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line before attacking a creature and you hit it with the attack, the target must succeed on a strength saving throw, DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength modifier, or be knocked prone. You can use this feature only once on each of your turns. So you just basically mow them down and knock them over. Alright, and then at 18th level you get Vigilant Defender. You respond to danger with extraordinary vigilance. In combat you get a special reaction you can take once on every creature's turn except your turn. You can use this special reaction only to make an opportunity attack, and you can't use it on the same turn that you would take, or that you take your normal reaction. So this is an exception to the 1 reaction per round. Now, if you use your normal reaction for any ability, then you don't get to use the special reaction. But when someone else's turn comes up in the same combat round, then you can go back to using your special reaction for opportunity attacks. Again, if you got creatures that are moving around within your threatened area. And that was the Cavalier. I'm actually surprised that where previously the Cavalier really seemed to be about mounted combat, this doesn't do a whole lot for the mounted combat other than the Born to the Saddle and the Ferocious Charger, but that also works without the use of a mount. So it's kind of interesting that they went that route, but otherwise, it just seems like a really, decent tanky class that's all about drawing attacks and trying to prevent, the party members from being attacked. So it's pretty decent all around. Now the next one we're going to go on to is the last of the fighter classes here. So we got the Samurai. With the Samurai, the first thing they get is bonus proficiency. So you gain one of the following skills. You gain History, Insight, Performance, or Persuasion, or you could choose another language, similar to what the Cavalier had. You also get Fighting Spirit, so at 3rd level, your intensity in battle can shield you and help you strike true. As a bonus action on your turn, you give yourself advantage on weapon attack rolls until the end of the current turn. When you do so, you also gain 5 temporary hit points, and the number of hit points increases as you gain levels. So you get 10 hit points at 10th level, 15 hit points at 15th level. You can use this feature 3 times, and you gain all expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. So basically 3 times per day you can give yourself advantage on your attacks for a round, as well as giving yourself extra hit points, or temporary hit points, so they would be used up first before you would take any actual damage. So pretty decent ability there for a 3rd level character. Alright, at 7th level they get Elegant Courtier. So your discipline and attention to detail allow you to excel in social situations. Whenever you make a persuasion check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. Your self-control also causes you to gain proficiency in wisdom saving throws, and if you already have proficiency in wisdom saving throws, you instead gain proficiency in either intelligence or charisma saving throws, your choice. Alright, 10th level you get Tireless Spirit, so when you roll initiative and you have no uses of your fighting spirit remaining, you regain 1 use. So if you used up all 3 of your uses of it and you get into another fight, you get 1 use back. And that would stay. So if you don't use it, then you still just have that 1 use until you burn it, basically. At 15th level you gain Rapid Strike, so you learn to trade accuracy for swift strikes. You can take an attack action on your turn and have, if you take the attack action on your turn and have advantage on the attack roll against one of the targets, you can forego the advantage for that roll and make an additional weapon attack, against that target as part of the same action. You can do so no more than once per turn. So if you have advantage on somebody, instead of rolling the 2d20 and taking the better of the 2 results, you can roll 2 separate attacks for the 1 attack that you would normally do. And then their last feature is Strength Before Death. Starting at 18th level, your fighting spirit can delay the grasp of death. If you take damage that reduces you to 0 hit points and doesn't kill you outright, you can use your reaction to delay falling unconscious, and you can immediately take an extra turn, interrupting the current turn. While you have 0 hit points during that extra turn, taking damage causes death saving throw failures as normal, and 3 death saving throw failures can still kill you. When the extra turn ends, you fall unconscious if you still have 0 hit points. Once you use this feature, you can't use it until you finish a long rest. So this is another sort of similar ability to the what the barbarian had, the zealot barbarian had, in that you still can stay up and you can still fight on even though you're reduced to 0 hit points. The only thing with this is that where you're just taking the 1 extra turn immediately after taking the damage, odds are you're not going to take enough hits that would cause you to automatically die. And if by some way you have like a healing potion you can quaff or something along those lines, then you can actually stay conscious, which I kind of like this ability a little bit better. It feels a little bit more balanced just based on the fact that it's only for the 1 turn and then you would fall unconscious as normal. So I like this version of it better than the one that the barbarian had. And that, I believe, is it for the fighters. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the monks. Alright, so having a look at the monk class now. I've always kind of stated this, but for the record, I've never been a huge fan of the monk classes in Dungeons & Dragons. It just, to me, it never really seemed to fit the feeling or the themes that I expect from D&D. I mean, it's probably because I started with 2nd edition, where monks weren't part of the core rules and everything had that very much medieval European flavor to it. So we've got some monk options here, and it's going to include, so if the fighter had my most favorite of all of the new abilities, this monk class is going to have my least favorite, or the one that I just kind of despise the most, and we'll get to that very shortly. Now again, just for the background stuff, for monks, it gives options for the monastery that you're in, as well as sort of a monastery icon that's meant to sort of reflect your training. as well as options for a master. Now again, I'm not really going to go into any detail on these just because none of them really struck me as something that I wanted to kind of read or incorporate into a character, and it probably has more to do with the fact that I'm just not a big fan of monks. So the reason that, so getting to my least favorite of all the abilities in here, we're going to start off with the Drunken Master. And again, I've never liked this concept in Dungeons and Dragons. I had, I think, in 3rd edition, and I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me. But let's read through the abilities here and see what we've got. Alright, so starting off, you get bonus proficiencies. So you get proficiency in the performance skill if you don't already have it. And you also gain proficiency with the brewer supplies if you don't already have it. So that makes sense. You know, your Drunken Master. It's the whole point of the Drunken technique is to sort of make your opponents unable to read your movements. So performance makes sense for that, as well as being able to brew your own booze, I guess, also makes sense. At 3rd level, you also gain the Drunken technique. So you learned how to twist and turn as part of your flurry of blows. Whenever you use Flurry of Blows, you gain the benefit of the disengage action, and your walking speed increases by 10 feet until the end of your current turn. So disengaging allows you to break combat without drawing attacks of opportunity. So you get to do that. And your speed increases by 10 as well. So you get to move further and not provoke attacks of opportunity. At 6th level, you get Tipsy Sway. So you learn to move in sudden swaying ways. You gain the following benefits, so leap to your feet. When you're prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of movement rather than half of your movement. And redirect attack. When a creature misses you with a melee attack roll, you can spend 1 key point as a reaction to cause that attack to hit one creature of your choice, other than the attacker. That creature, or that you can see within 5 feet of you. So if you get missed by an attack, you can redirect it and have it hit another one of the enemies that you're facing. Drunkard's Luck. Starting at 11th level, you always seem to get a lucky bounce at the right moment. You have when you make an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw, and have disadvantage on the roll, you can spend 2 key points to cancel the disadvantage for that roll. So that's pretty good. It's a way of lessening the risk of missing attacks and saving throws and stuff like that. And then finally, at 17th level, Intoxicated Frenzy. So you gain the ability to make an overwhelming number of attacks against a group of enemies. When you use Flurry of Blows, you can make up to 3 additional attacks with it, up to a total of 5 Flurry of Blow attacks, provided that each Flurry of Blow attack targets a different creature this turn. So if you're up against large groups of enemies, this is a way to sort of wade through them and smack each one as you go by. So that's the Drunken Master. Honestly, it's not too bad in this version. I just never liked the idea of it. It just doesn't do anything for me personally. I would never end up ever playing this. But there are people out there that will probably enjoy it. I know there are people out there in campaigns that I've run that would make one just to, kind of irritate me. But that's the Drunken Master. Like I said, it's probably my least favorite of all of them. So let's move on to the next monk option here, the Way of the Kensei. So the Kensei are monks that use weapons, and they train very extensively with their weapons, kind of focusing specifically on a very small number of weapons. In the past, they had one in 3rd edition or 3.5, which was 1 weapon. You would choose 1 weapon that you could do stuff with to gain your benefits from. Now, so for Path Kensei, you get Kensei weapons. So you choose 2 types of weapons to be your Kensei weapons. 1 melee weapon and 1 ranged weapon. Each of these weapons can be any simple or martial weapon that lacks the heavy and special properties. The longbow is also a valid choice. You gain proficiency with these weapons if you don't already have it, and weapons of the chosen types are monk weapons for you. Many of this tradition's features work only with your Kensei weapons. When you reach 6th, 11th, and 17th level, you can choose another type of weapon, either melee or ranged, to be a Kensei weapon for you, following the criteria above. So there you go. So there can't be heavy weapons like I think Maul would count as that. But, like long swords, short swords, scimitars, axes, I think, would probably work for that. Anyway, and then your ranged attacks, like bows and shuriken and stuff like that, you can also use. You also get agile parry. So if you make an unarmed strike as part of an attack action on your turn and you are holding your kensei weapon, you can use it to defend yourself if it is a melee weapon. So you gain +2 bonus to AC until the start of your next turn. While that weapon is in your hand, you aren't incapacitated. So if you make an unarmed strike and you have your sword, you can use the sword basically to parry attacks. Kensei shot. You can use a bonus action on your turn to make your ranged attacks with a kensei weapon more deadly. When you do so, any target you hit with a ranged attack using a kensei weapon takes an extra d4 damage of the weapon's type, so bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, and you retain this benefit until the end of your current turn. And then we have Way of the Brush. You gain proficiency with your choice of calligrapher's supplies or painter supplies. So that's all stuff that you get right when you first choose Path of the Kensei. So that's all stuff that you get at 3rd level. Alright, at 6th level you get one with the blade. You can extend your ki into the Kensei weapons, granting you the following benefits. So there is magic kensei weapons. Your attacks with your kensei weapons count as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. And you get deft strike. So when you hit the target with a kensei weapon, you can spend 1 ki point to cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target equal to your martial arts die. You can use this feature only once on each of your turns, so it's extra damage on top of everything else. So that's again pretty decent. At 11th level, you get Sharpen the Blade, so you gain the ability to augment your weapon further with your ki. So as a bonus action, you can expend 3 ki points to grant one kensei weapon you touch a bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls when you attack with it. The bonus equals the number of ki points that you spent. This bonus lasts for 1 minute or until you use this feature again. This feature has no effect on a magic weapon that already has a bonus to attack rolls and damage. So you could spend 1, 2, or 3 points to get +1, 2, or 3 to attacks and damage. And then we have Unerring Accuracy. So at 17th level, your Mastery of Weapons grants you extraordinary accuracy. If you miss an attack roll using a monk weapon on your turn, you can re-roll it. You can use this feature only once on each of your turns. So that's actually not specific to your kensei weapons either. It's just when you're using a monk weapon and you miss, you can re-roll the attack essentially once on each turn. So that is the Way of the Kensei, and we're just going to move right on to the Way of the Sun Soul. So the monks of the Way of the Sun Soul learn to channel their life energy into searing bolts of light. Alright, seems interesting. So their first ability that they get at 3rd level is Radiant Sunbolt. So you can hurl searing bolts of magical radiance. You gain a new attack option that you can use with the attack action. This special attack is a ranged spell attack with a range of 30 feet. You are proficient with it and you add your dexterity modifier to its attacks and damage rolls. The damage is radiant and its damage die is a d4. This die changes as you gain monk levels, as shown in the martial arts column. So whatever your martial arts weapon damage is, then it would be the same for these radiant bolts. When you take the attack action on your turn and you use the special attack as part of it, you can spend 1 ki point to make the special attack twice as a bonus action. When you gain the extra attack feature, this special attack can be used for any of the attacks you make as part of the attack action. Alright, and then we have, at 6th level, the Searing Arc Strike. You gain the ability to channel your ki into searing waves of energy. Immediately after you take the attack action on your turn, you can spend 2 ki points to cast the Burning Hand spell as a bonus action. When you can spend additional ki points to cast Burning Hands as a higher level spell. Each additional ki point you spend increases the spell's level by 1. The maximum number of ki points, 2 plus any additional points that you can spend on the spell, equals half your monk level. So at 6th level you could spend up to 3 points. So you could cast Burning Burning Hands is a second level spell slot, basically. At 11th level, you can get Searing Sunburst, so you gain the ability to create an orb of light that erupts into a devastating explosion. As an action, you can magically create an orb and hurl it at a point you choose within 150 feet where it explodes into a sphere of radiant light for a brief but deadly instant. Each creature in that 20-foot radius sphere must make a Constitution saving throw or take 2d6 radiant damage. A creature doesn't need to make the save if the creature is behind total cover that is opaque. You can increase the sphere's damage by expending key points. Each point you spend to a maximum of 3 increases the damage by 2d6. So you can spend up to 3 points for increases the damage by 2d6. So you can get an extra 6d6. So you can get up to 8d6 by spending 3 key points on that. So you can, for 3 key points, basically you can lob a fireball. And then we have the Sun Shield. So at 17th level you become wreathed in a luminous magical aura. You shed bright light in a 30-foot radius and dim light for an additional 30 feet, and you can extinguish this as a bonus action. If a creature hits you with a melee attack while this light shines, you can use your reaction to deal radiant damage to the creature. The radiant damage equals 5 plus your wisdom modifier. So if you had 16 wisdom, then you could deal 8 damage if somebody chooses to hit you and you haven't used your reaction yet this turn. And so that's the monk class. Again, I've never been huge on the monk personally, so none of those options really excite me. I kind of like the kensei one, I think, the most, and I really don't like the drunken master one, but that's again my own personal opinion. So we got the fighter and the monk out of the way. The next thing we're going to look at would be the rogue. Alright, so taking a look at the rogue here, so the background stuff that they give you, again this is more along the lines of stuff that I kind of would like to incorporate into like NPCs or characters that I design. But they have guilty pleasures, so these are things that basically offer extra temptation, like large gems, a smile from a pretty face, getting a new ring for your finger, a chance to deflate someone's ego, the finest food and drink, or adding to your collection of exotic coins. There's also some adversaries that can, again, create some interesting opportunities for Dungeon Master to work with. So these would be people that you've probably run afoul of in the past. I'm not going to go through them all here, but for example, just looking at the top one, so the pirate captain, on whose ship you once served, what you call moving on, the captain calls mutiny. So you were on a ship at one point, and you basically left it. You thought it was okay, but the captain sort of disagrees and holds a grudge against you. So that's somebody that may try to track you down later on and become a nemesis that the character has to deal with as the campaign progresses. On the other side of that, there's also benefactors. So these are individuals that have assisted you at some way, shape, or form in the past. Looking at the second option there, so again, if you want to look at these a little closer, but the second one, the Bagger King has hidden you from your pursuers many times in return for future considerations. So again, just some really cool background ideas. So looking at the roguish archetypes, so there are 3 archetypes that were introduced here. So we're going to look at them starting with the inquisitive. So this is someone who excels at rooting out secrets and unraveling mysteries. So let's start off with their first ability, Ear for Deceit. When you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you develop a talent for picking out lies. Whenever you make a Wisdom Insight check to determine whether a creature is lying, treat a roll of 7 or lower on a d20 as an 8. So using Insight to see if somebody's lying to you, the minimum result that you can get would be 8 plus your skill bonus. Eye for Detail you also get at 3rd level. So starting at 3rd level, you can use a bonus action to make a Wisdom Perception check to spot a hidden creature or object, or make an Intelligence Investigation check to uncover or decipher clues. At 3rd level, you also get Insightful Fighting. You gain the ability to decipher an opponent's tactics and develop a counter to them. As a bonus action, you can make a Wisdom Insight check against a creature you can see that isn't incapacitated. contested by the target's charisma deception check. If you succeed, you can use your sneak attack against that target even if you don't have advantage on the attack roll, but not if you have disadvantage. The benefit lasts for 1 minute or until you successfully use this feature against a different target. So you can kind of read their movements and get to deal your sneak attack. Now, as long as you're not at disadvantage for some reason or another, like for example, if they end up using a spell like invisibility or something like that, then you wouldn't get the sneak attack damage off. But if you succeed on your insight check against their deception check, you don't need to worry about having advantage to get a sneak attack off, which is pretty cool. At 9th level, you get Steady Eye. You have advantage on any wisdom, perception, or intelligence investigation check if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. At 13th level, you get Unerring Eye, so your senses are almost impossible to foil. As an action, you sense the presence of illusions, shape changers not in their original form, and other magic designed to deceive the senses within 30 feet of you, provided you aren't blinded or deafened. You sense that an effect is attempting to trick you, but you gain no insight into what is hidden or into its true nature. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So basically with that, if somebody is like shape changed around you, you know that something's going on, but you don't necessarily know who it is or what the nature of it is. You just know that there's something unusual, and that might trigger you to making like insight checks or perception checks, things along those lines. And then the last ability that they get is Eye for Weakness. So at 17th level, you can exploit a creature's weakness by carefully studying its tactics and movement. While your Insightful Fighting feature applies to a creature, the sneak attack damage against the creature increases by an extra 3d6. So that's on top of whatever you're already doing. And so that's pretty good. And I actually like this one quite a bit, actually. I was kind of surprised. When I first saw the name of it, I didn't really think too much of it. And to be honest, I kind of thought back to Dragon Age Inquisition, a game that I just recently finally got a chance to finish. But yeah, it's an interesting class. I like that one. But let's move on next to the Mastermind. So your focus is on influence and your focus is on people and on the influence and secrets they have. So many spies, courtiers, and schemers follow this archetype, leading lives of intrigue. So let's just have a look here. So at 3rd level, they get the Master of Intrigue ability. So you gain proficiency with the Disguise Kit, the Forgery Kit, and 1 gaming kit or gaming set of your choice. You also learn 2 languages of your choice. Additionally, you can unerringly mimic the speech patterns and accent of a creature that you hear speak for at least 1 minute, enabling you to pass yourself off as a native speaker of that particular land, provided you know the language. So you don't mimic their exact voice, like you're not going to use that in order to pretend to be them, but you can essentially use it to speak a language fluently if you kind of understand it, and it's almost as if you're native and not someone who knows the language but doesn't necessarily belong there. So you can kind of use it to make it seem like you're a native to that region. At 3rd level, you also get Master of Tactics, so you can use the Help action as a bonus action. Additionally, when you use the Help action to aid an ally in attacking a creature, the target of that attack can be within 30 feet of you rather than within 5 feet of you, if the target can see or hear you. So just a way of helping, grant advantage on attack rolls. Insightful Manipulator. Starting at 9th level, if you spend at least 1 minute observing or interacting with another creature outside of combat, you can learn certain information about its capabilities compared to your own. The DM tells you if the creature is equal, superior, or inferior in regard to 2 of the following characteristics of your choice: intelligence, wisdom, charisma, or class levels, if any. At the DM's option, you may also realize you know a piece of the creature's history or one of its personality traits, if it has any. So it's just a way of kind of measuring somebody up. Like if you're interacting with an NPC, the DM can tell you if their intelligence is, equal, superior, or inferior, so the same, less, or greater than yours, or the same thing for wisdom or charisma, and if they seem like they're more experienced, so if they have more levels than you, which is pretty neat. Alright, misdirection. Beginning at 13th level, you can sometimes cause another creature to suffer an attack meant for you. When you are targeted by an attack while a creature within 5 feet of you is granting you cover against that attack, you can use your reaction to have the target have the attack target that creature instead of you. So this is one that I think works best on a tabletop with a grid, so you know where everybody is, and you can kind of draw lines for the attacks. And I don't know how much this would end up coming into play. But for example, if there's something larger than you that's granting you cover from attacks, then that's when it would kind of come into use. But I don't know how often that one ability would come into play. Again, I think you really need to sort of have some sort of visual representation of combat to understand that, or to be able to easily use that ability. Alright, and next we have the Soul of Deceit. So at 17th level, your thoughts can't be read by telepathy or any means unless you allow it. You can present false thoughts by succeeding on a charisma deception check contested by the mind reader's wisdom insight check. Additionally, no matter what you say, magic that would determine if you are telling the truth indicates you are being truthful if you so choose, and you can't be compelled to tell the truth by magic. So, Zone of Truth, for example, you can foil that as much as you want. So that was the mastermind. So I was actually I was mistaken. I think I said there was only 3 archetypes for the rogue. There are actually 4. So let's move right on to the scout. So the scout, you're skilled in stealth and surviving far from the streets of a city, allowing you to scout ahead of your companions during expeditions. Might be a good class to have during the Tomb of Annihilation adventure, for example. So at 3rd level, they get the Skirmisher ability. So you are difficult to pin down during a fight. So you can move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So if somebody closes in on you and you decide you don't want to be in melee range with them, you can burn your reaction and move 30 feet up to 30 feet away. Or sorry, half your speed. For 30 feet, you can move up to 15 feet away, just burning your reaction. At 3rd level, you also get Survivalist. So, when you choose this archetype, you gain proficiency in the nature and survival skills if you don't already have it. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses either of these proficiencies. So if you're trying to track something, for example, then you get double your proficiency bonus on your survival check. Superior mobility. At 9th level, your walking speed increases by 10 feet. If you have a climbing or swimming speed, this increases for those as well. Doesn't mention anything about flying. Not too many races or things give you a flying speed, but it's interesting to know that it applies to other forms of movement as well, especially climbing. Climbing is pretty interesting, that they would give you the 10 feet for that. At 13th level, you get Ambush Master. So you excel at leading ambushes and acting first in a fight, so you have advantage on initiative rolls. In addition, the first creature you hit during the first round of a combat becomes easier for you and others to strike. Attack rolls against that target have advantage until the start of your next turn. So that's the first thing that you fight in the very first round. So it's not going to carry on beyond the first round of combat, but if you're fighting something like, let's just say you're fighting a solo monster like a dragon, if the scout hits it, then until the scout's next turn, every other attack roll against it is done with advantage, which is pretty good and could decide, a few fights pretty easily. Alright, and then their last ability is Sudden Strike. So at 17th level, you can strike with deadly speed. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one additional attack as a bonus action. This attack can benefit from your sneak attack even if you've already used it this turn, but you can't use your sneak attack against the same target more than once in a turn. So this is something you'd want to use against the second enemy. But you can get the bonus action off, and if you have advantage on the attack roll, you can get sneak attack off on them as well. Alright, and the last of the archetypes we're going to look at is the swashbuckler. So the swashbuckler is sort of, I guess the term dueling dandy has been used a few times before. They're sort of like the charismatic, conceited type of, fighters that use like flourishing attacks and, really flashy and showy stuff. I've always kind of liked the idea of the swashbuckler. It just always seems like kind of a cool concept. And actually, one of the miniatures that I use for the rogue is actually a swashbuckler. Alright, so starting at 3rd level, they get fancy footwork. You learn how to land a strike and then slip away without reprisal. During your turn, if you make a melee attack against a creature, that creature can't make attacks of opportunity against you for the rest of your turn, so you can use your disengage action, or you can even use like your dash, or just simply move normally without having to use any special actions, which is again just a way to sort of annoy the monsters that or the encounters that you're going up against. At 3rd level, you also get rakish audacity, which I just love the way that sounds. So your confidence propels you into battle. You can give yourself a bonus on to your initiative rolls equal to your charisma modifier. You also gain an additional way to use your sneak attack. You don't need advantage on the attack roll to use your sneak attack against a creature if you are within 5 feet of it. No other creatures are within 5 feet of you, and you don't have disadvantage on the roll. All other rules for sneak attack apply. So if you kind of go off against a single enemy and there's nobody else around you, you can get a sneak attack off just by attacking somebody that's kind of separated from everybody else, more or less. They also get panache, and again, I just love the names for some of these abilities. So your charm becomes extraordinarily beguiling. As an action, you can make a charisma persuasion check contested by the creature's wisdom insight check. The creature must be able to hear you, and the two of you must share a language. If you succeed on the check, the creature is hostile to you. It has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you, and can't make opportunity attacks against targets other than you. This effect lasts for 1 minute, until one of your companions attacks a target or affects it with a spell, or until you and the target are more than 60 feet apart. If you succeed on the check and the creature isn't hostile towards you, it is charmed by you for 1 minute. While charmed, it regards you as a friendly acquaintance. This effect ends immediately if you or your companions do anything harmful to it. So, basically, with panache, you can make something just want to attack you, essentially. And, if it attacks anything else other than you, it's distracted by you. So, I like that one. Again, I think that's kind of a neat ability. At 13th level, they get Elegant Maneuver. So you can use a bonus action on your turn to gain advantage on your next dexterity, acrobatics, or strength athletics check you make during the same turn. And at 17th level, they get Master Duelist. So your mastery of the blade lets you turn failure into success in combat. If you miss with an attack roll, you can roll it again with advantage. Once you do so, you can't use this feature again until you finish a short or long rest. So essentially, if you miss an attack, you can only do this once per day, but you can re-roll the attack and do it with advantage, so you roll the 2d20s and take the higher of the two. So anyway, those were the fighter, the monks, and the rogue classes for Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So let me know in the comments below which ones you guys like. For me, the one that I still like the most would probably have to be the Arcane Archer, just because I've always loved playing Arcane Archers, and I always love playing Archers. And I'll be honest, I think the Swashbuckler is probably my second favorite of the ones that I've talked about today. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I love to hear your thoughts on these classes. And be sure to come back tomorrow when we finish things off with our arcane classes. So we're going to be looking at the Bard, the Sorcerer, and the Wizard. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any questions on any of the things that I discussed here today, please don't hesitate to ask, and hopefully you come back next time. See you then.